I try to synthesize the first round. So we heard about some concerns from the sustainability point of view. And we also realized that there are some competing technologies. So we have some contribution stressing the importance of the some optimization in the network. So we refer to software-defined networks or to infrastructure sharing. And finally, we pointed out the problem of the over-the-top operators. So one of the main questions is about the regulation. So referring to over-the-top, we would say that we need a stronger regulation. In other respect, we say that we are already over-regulated. So there is definitely a problem of regulation. But I think that here, this audience can focus more effectively on technological issues because it's a technological audience. So the point I will try to investigate with you is the competition among technologies. So we have an increase of traffic demand, but the real problem is the delay between the investment and the revenues. So many telecom operators is concerned about the overrun costs. I mean, the possibility that in the meanwhile, between investment and revenues, something happens. So there is some, apparently there is some difficulty in investing. But if we focus on the mobile operators, we have to say that we are assisting to very huge investment. In many countries, the auction for frequency band, the 800 frequency band, has been successful. So in Italy, most of you know that just for the 800 megahertz band, there would be a 3 billion offer. So there is no lack of money, in my opinion. There is some concern, some fear that in the time interval between investment and revenues, something could happen. In mobile networks, the time interval between investment and the revenues is much shorter than in fixed networks. You can graduate your investment in a slow approach, very slow approach. In fixed networks, we have to afford very huge investment, and then we have to wait for the revenues. So maybe that my feeling is that investment are already in place, but already in place in technologies where this time interval, this distance between investment and revenues is shorter. So the question I like to ask to our participant to this roundtable is, which is the scenario in the next few years? Are we going to assist to a investment in both technologies, mobile and fixed? Or, I'm sorry that there is no the representative from Italian fixed network operator from Telecom Italia. But I think the main question today is if investments will take place. This investment will be in all the technologies, or will privilege just one of them. I refer to mobile technologies. So I would be very interested in listening your opinion about that. So I give the floor to our president.
Yes,
please.
A couple of remarks maybe. First of all, we have to realize probably that, well, let's make a guess, half of the world population doesn't use telecommunications full-fledged. They're still in development. 3/4 of China hasn't heard of mobile phones, I think, and they will come. Same goes for energy, by the way, and cars and whatever you have. So the energy problem and the CO2 problem, well, this is not a climate conference, but I have very strong opinions on that. I believe that I belong to the 40% of scientists who think that CO2 is not the main climate change. Nobody discusses climate change, by the way. There are a lot of other reasons and better reasons. But there is, well, we have politically decided that CO2 is the big enemy, and probably for a part it is because it comes from coal and oil, and they are scarce, beginning to come scarce. So enough of that. A couple of years ago, we had these auctions for UMTS 3G.
Yeah.
They always brought the industry back on its feet, on its knees actually, because everybody had to write off the investments, billions of them. I once did a calculation for Germany, for Netherlands, and for England, which was about 40 billions of investment, which they have written off as losses. And now they say they make profit, but they don't make profit if you take that money into account. So that's a big question. You said about developing countries. I worked 5 years in Indonesia, and there we had a simple rule. Everybody was very keen to invest in Jakarta, because that is densely populated. A lot of people will have phones. But in Sumatra and Sulawesi, it's a big problem. The investment costs per line are 10 times as high, and your revenues are 10 times as low. So you're looking at a factor 100, which you have to compensate. And that only got solved when the first versions of mobile telecommunications came around. But again, the investments were a lot simpler. So that's another thing. Then, more to the present. I believe that if people would pay for what they use actually, and not have fancy tariffs, Vodafones and what have you, competing each other by rock bottom tariffs, giving half $500 equipment away for a subscription of 30 euro per month for 2 years. There can't be much profit in there. So I believe that if you want to use, and that's a very liberal view, of course, if you want to use broadband, you have to pay for broadband. And if you want to use your phone only a couple of times, well, then your expenditure is less. But you can't have a flat rate for all these kind of things. You must pay for what you use. And that will automatically probably reduce, maybe not for very rich people, but if you see what youngsters are doing nowadays, sending photographs, sending videos, whatever you have, via the mobile phone, if they would pay the actual bill for that, you would see what happens. Maybe I leave it at that.
Okay. So I think that anyway, the evolution is towards flat rates. So it's quite difficult to change this attitude, maybe. So there are I'm afraid that it's too late to change the attitude. So I don't know if you want to say some, to give the possibility to Professor Harris to reply to your point about the climate change. So you say that you are one of the first 40% of scientists which do not believe that CO2 is responsible for this.
Yep.
So I want to have a reply. So if you elaborate a bit, a little more.
Well, do you have an hour?
No, just few minutes.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, measurements are very insecure. That's proven. A lot of facts like ocean streams and things like that have not been taken into account. Warm Gulf streams are emerging, not only in the Atlantic but also in the Pacific. What happens for a part in the North Pole where the ice is diminishing, and there's no discussion about that, that's happening. The question is, are we going to fight it or are we going to live with it? And the 60% is thinking that you can fight it, but you probably can't. Because there is a number of things, and of course CO2 doesn't help. It is for sure an effect. And only because we burn coal and oil and stuff like that, which is scarce, we should be very careful with that. But that's totally on the reason for the climate control. Polar ice is for a part melting because the warm stream is going underneath it and eating the ice from itself. It has very little to do with CO2. Well, I can go on half an hour for that, but I won't.
So we'll be interested in your reply.
Well, I'm not sure whether the wording of the slides that I had actually said that I was agreeing with the CO2 argument. So actually I'm not going to try and contest the comments that you've made. What I was saying, though, is that, well, CO2 seems to at least contribute to pollution, which I'd like to see disappear, irrespective of whether it is changing my climate or not. No, I think the whole issue here is about just trying to conserve energy and to be able to make those cost savings in order to provide you with the opportunity to move forward economically. I'm sure that we could have great big arguments about the CO2 and whether it's contributing to global warming or not. There's a public perception being fueled by others that's what it is. But irrespective of that, I guess my comment is that we're needing to ensure that we reduce the costs involved in the consumption of huge amounts of energy and in any telecommunications infrastructure that we decide to provide. And so I guess that's roughly where my argument's coming from, rather than trying to agree or disagree with whether the proponents of climate change are or are not right.
Okay, thank you. We can agree on that. So I think that everyone can doubt if the CO2 is main responsible for global warming, but all of us are convinced that CO2 is not beneficial to our environment. So to reduce it can be useful in any case. So let's go back to my question. So I want an answer to the question. So my feeling is that there is some willingness to invest, but the willingness to invest in those technologies which where investor can be more confident that revenues are not delayed by some other circumstances. So I believe that one of the main obstacles to fiber optics today is the delay between investment and revenues. And we are trying to convince ourselves that the traffic is growing so fast that we cannot avoid the use of fiber optics. But the question is, are we really in this situation where other technologies cannot afford the growth of traffic demand? So the presentation by Alberto Lotti pointed out that there are many new features, small cell, and which can use in cope with this traffic demand, if any. So let's start with Alberto. Do you believe that in the next few years, wireless will be able to cope with the traffic demand or not?
Okay, the question is important. In order to answer to the question, make a clear distinction between mobile and wireless. Because what I stated, starting from the needs and the wills of the people, of the customer, is that they are going to a different type of appliances which require wireless. This does not imply that they will all use mobile. For instance, when an individual is using his tablet at home and is using wireless for sure, Wi-Fi for sure, is he mobile? Well, he is mobile internally in his home, but basically is, say, in the traditional concept, a fixed end user. Okay, he may use mobile technology. How? Because, as I said, he can use a femtocell internally in his house, and with this femtocell, he can connect a smartphone either with Wi-Fi or mobile. Maybe it will be the smartphone that will choose the technology. This is irrelevant. The use is wireless, and again, this is not typically a mobile end user, but he's using mobile technology. So, to go in more detail with your question, yes, I think that a technology mix is needed because we need to focalize investment. And in the same way that in the traditional fixed network, a technology mix is needed, and the recent facts are showing this. We are going from a model where only fiber to the home where was seeming the right solution to the problem of bandwidth, to a situation where there are several fiber to the X, fiber to the cabinet, fiber to the serving point technologies, which are more or less suitable depending on the needs of the geographical area. And the same will happen with wireless technology. And wireless technology will use some fixed technology, because Wi-Fi basically is a fixed technology, and even mobile technology, like small cells, both for fixed usage or real mobile usage.
Okay. Some other opinion?
Yeah.
Please.
Well, basically, I fully support the last position of Alberto Lotti, and we have made within ITU a lot of studies for the different geo scenarios worldwide. And we have extreme high density areas, medium density, low density, islands. We have countries with 2,000 islands. And clearly, these competing technologies will be more complementary than competing. It is clear that when we have low density and these 2,000 islands, a radio solution is required, and even the demand is lower. And it is clear that in the nucleus of a city, the radio or mobile solutions goes to the capacity limit, are dominated by capacity. So if we install femtocells, okay, we have to arrive with fiber to the. So finally, the fiber is there. So both are complementary, and we made studies on the borders when each one is better from the financial point of view. So again, the present value of annual charges for every solution determine in which geo scenario we have to invest to be sure that we get the revenues. And maybe some medium type areas in which all of them are feasible, and in that medium density they really compete, and in that case is the first to arrive the one that gets the customers.
Please comment.
No, just to react to that, to how things should combine. There is in the Netherlands, and probably in a lot of more places, but I know it in the Netherlands, there's a development going, if you have a big office building, not occupied by one organization, but with a lot of different organizations, and there's probably 10 different mobile providers for there. Yeah. One has one, the other has another. So normally what would happen today is that all these operators start building their infrastructure in those buildings. So you have 10 different infrastructures. And what's happening in the Netherlands, and a colleague of mine is working with that, is trying to combine to make one infrastructure which collects and works with all the different operators together.
Yeah.
And then in the end you have to have some intelligence where it is split out, of course, but internally in the building you have them one.
Okay. Please.
Yes, just to follow on a little bit from Oscar's point before, I think the solution, if you could call it that, is clearly a mixture of the optical and or fibre technologies and wireless technologies, but the solutions will have to vary according to country and context. My home country originally was Australia, and of course we're looking at vast distances interconnected by to just cities that are hanging on the edge of the continent. In New Zealand, much smaller, but the terrain is so much more difficult, and the population is spread out more. So each of these two countries has taken on ambitious plans for rolling out fibre. In Australia, the so-called NBN, or Australian National Broadband Network, is a fibre optic cabling to 93% of Australian homes, schools, etc. And the objective here is to try and provide up to about gigabit per second broadband speeds. The remaining premises to be connected either with fixed wireless or satellite to 12 megabits per second. So that's the kind of solution that you see for Australia. In New Zealand, we're rolling out broadband, ultra-fast broadband initiative, which is trying to go past about 75% of New Zealanders. But most of it is just focusing on the major population centres, because it's incredibly difficult to provide the remaining 25% who are spread out in very difficult terrain. So I think the simple solution of a mixture is correct. It's just the balance of those mixtures that will be important on a country basis.
Okay, so I think a very, very, very shareable opinion that it depends on the context. So I definitely agree on that. I want to add a further thought. So it's not just a matter of population density, population distribution, and the morphology of the country. It may be also a dependence on on other technological stories. For instance, in Europe we have very similar population distribution, but we have very different television histories. For example, we have some countries with a very diffused cable network, and other countries just like Italy or Spain, where TV cable have not been implemented. And now the evolution between the countries also depend on the history of the technological television approach. So also I think the impact of new services, I refer for example to cloud computing, could affect in different ways, different contexts. So if you can comment on the relationship between the cloud computing traffic demand and the different population distribution and so on. There is an impact of the technological ground on the evolution of cloud computing, according to you?
I think cloud computing will play a fundamental role because, as I said before, not only for applications but also for control plane of the networks. And what we see also in Germany is that a lot of, in the ICT area, a lot of small, medium enterprises migrate their servers to the cloud because they save costs. That means cloud services in future will become less and less costly. Yeah? And this will help SMEs and later on also big companies to reduce their costs, and also network operators. So I think cloud computing will play a central role. And the other issue is the energy saving potential, because a cloud, you can, if you have a cloud management system, yeah, you can adapt the cloud according to the real demand. So to switch off processors in low traffic situations. So I think there's a huge potential for cloud computing to solve also these energy problems. But on the other hand, this requires much more complexity in the control. So a lot of research questions also for us arise in terms of reliability, resilience, security issues. So that this one graph which was shown before, multi-level network planning. So we have to extend our network planning not only on the network but also on the cloud. So integrated planning of the network and the cloud infrastructure.
Okay, just to complete the frame, do you believe that cloud computing will pose some bandwidth constraint on the development of future networks? May cloud computing be a driver for fixing, for optical fibers, for example?
Yes, I think yes, because in a cloud environment we will have data centers, maybe distributed data centers, and we need very high capacities to interconnect them. And with also high resilience requirements, so it will push at least in the core the deployment of high-speed fiber connections. But the problem we have in the access, I also agree with my previous speakers. So if we would have a small cell or femtocell deployment, we will need fiber also in the access, and because, as I said before, no operator can afford building that infrastructure alone. We have to take into account concepts of network virtualization. We have to share this in order to keep it affordable. So I think this will be the only way to deploy this infrastructure and to deploy broadband services.
Okay, I think everyone agrees that fiber are necessary, both backhauling of mobile networks and for situation where the capacity is a critical issue. The question is if we really need to have fiber to the home or this kind of fiber to the node may be enough. So I refer both to cloud computing, to mobile networks and so on. So the question about the necessity of fiber to the home is one of the most demanding from the investment point of view.
Yeah, I think at least we would need fiber to the curb. Maybe the last few meters we can take coaxial cables or copper lines. Yeah, but on the other hand, what I see, we need more capacity in the wireless area, and we have to shift frequencies today used for broadcast services, to cellular services. So then we have to carry IPTV over, or we have to carry TV over IP over the fiber infrastructure. It would be more reasonable to do that and to free the capacities for cellular services. And when we then have this HD TV deployment, maybe also 3D TV deployment, then it's required that we have fiber up, at least up to the curb.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I understand that cloud computing is quite in. It has to do with skill sets. Organizations can, let's say, outsource their stuff. But I believe that, let's say, from a traffic and volume point of view, cloud computing is a big stimulant for even up to the final user, because first he had everything at home or in his office, his data, his applications, and now the tendency is to put that somewhere far away, which raises all kind of things of control and security and that kind of things. But there's a lot more traffic going up and down, which normally was just in the home.
I absolutely agree. So we will maybe see if private users will also use more and more cloud services. Yeah, so don't have any storage at home anymore. Yeah, then the traffic will increase even more, which pushes then again the need for fiber deployment. And maybe for cloud services we can make not anymore the same mistake, namely flat rate. We can charge per megabyte of storage. So in this case, it would be possible, and also maybe a good point for an operator, a new revenue point, that they will offer own cloud services. Like, for example, in Germany, Deutsche Telekom will offer also a telecom cloud service. Yeah? And this generates new revenue, and with that revenue, we can build up the fiber infrastructure.
Okay. Okay, so Andrea. Yes.
Just a comment, also starting from what you said, and you said really rightly that frequency has to be saved, because it is not like it is a good which is scarce And you said that we need much more frequencies in the band of broadband television. I think that in all the countries there are now the possibility to get these frequencies with the swap from the broadcast television. And just for that, I think that coming back to the question of Mario, the initial question, the solution should be really a balance of technologies, really depending on the content, on the location. So at home, really, as also Alberto said, we have both technologies, wireless and mobile. Wireless and fixed. Why to use LTE at home? There is no sense when you can have a fixed network, perhaps accessed by Wi-Fi. In the Green Park, why to use LTE when we have an extended Wi-Fi network? So, but in most of other contents, you have to use mobile networks because there is no chance to have a real fixed network at the cost, a sufficient cost to be handled. So I think that really
there is a reply why to use mobile. Just one bill, maybe a reply.
Yes, of course. But I don't think that the fact to have only one bill should be the most important problem or for a user. Or it will depend also on what you can offer. So I think that really the balance of the technologies should be the solution. But even also in a mobile network, the backbone is fixed.
Yes, of course.
Often fixed.
Yes,
so
of course.
in any case, you
to
have balance fixed and mobile technologies for to
there is no doubt that in the backbone the fibers would be necessary. There is no doubt about it. The question is how far fiber will go. So just trying to synthesize the round table. We understood that we have a lot of constraints. Some environmental constraint, we have some capacity constraint, some economical constraint. And we also have a different situation in many different countries. So it's really hard to forecast which the evolution will be in every country. So we can say with some degree of confidence that we have we need some time to understand which is the right evolution for traffic demand, because in a period of a crisis, of economic crisis, just like this one, the investment are much lower than in the past, and the risk that we can take is much lower than in the past. So I just to try to conclude this roundtable, just underlining the importance of events like this one, because the meeting of people with different experience, different competence, different expertise can only help us find the right solution country by country. So let me thank again all the participants to this round table, which in my opinion has been really interesting. And let me thank all of you for your kind attention. See you.
Only two information. First of all, the meeting of International Scientific Committee is today at 5 o'clock in the Bisogno room. Then we explain you the location. And then maybe there is the possibility to have a visit at the Capitol Museum Wednesday, but I have the confirmation. See you later.
Okay. Thank you.